So one of the many things we're working on is I'm going to rewrite Once I Was a Reporter, the 10th anniversary edition of Once I Was a Reporter, and it's not going. It's let me tell you what it is, which is that I have to break back into being the, I guess, medicated person that I was, that fell for this woman that had MEA on her name tag, and she was my superior. She's so superior. She was the associate news editor, and we really were the best class that ever came out of in recent memory. Kaleo Hawaii. I don't think there's ever been since Spencer Ashita the year after, and then maybe the year after that. Things really went in the direction. I've been reading when I was at UH Manoa just a couple of months ago. I read their paper before the summer session began, and there's so much to be desired. Of course, sports and photography, you can never go wrong with it. But in terms of news, I digress. So I'm writing the 10th anniversary edition, and yes, so why medicate anybody? You can put yourself in a trance. You can press two fingers, which, by the way, even if you don't have a story at the end of those two fingers, it releases some dopamine, oxytocin, or whatever in your brain, and it does begin to alter your state a little bit. Now, again, I went through hypnotherapy, like I talk about in my book, Come Back in the Century, and that's what they did. So after they, they imagine, oh, this beautiful white woman is a human toilet, and that all your brown, it's going to be flushed down into the cold magma of the earth. She's endlessly flushing the human toilet, and she's sucking all the brown, the India, all the Mexican, all the, and this woman is, if you've seen Hunted the Beach, you go to the beach. So, and then, so now, you get the woman, and she's your human toilet, and then it makes you white, or whatever. And make sure you remember the story. Not exactly. Yeah, so I'm having to break back into who I was and the person I was. They called it glory days, a movie about college. I was in a glory days, which just made me not make moves on people I should have, and therefore I have bird shit on my shoulder and I'm homeless in San Diego. But I'm breaking back into being that person because I'm not going to write it as who I am today, knowing what I know today. I'm going to write it as who I was when I wrote the book, when I was, I think, 26 or 28, sometimes when I'm 27. I might have been 20. I think I was 26 when I wrote that book in 2016. I was 26 years old. And there's so much missing from it. But we're going to talk about, so we got that out of the way, we're talking about writing the 10th anniversary edition of Once I Was a Reporter. We're going to start a new series where, as part of it, since I don't have a lot of time anymore, when I'm not doing that, if I get an idea, well, we'll come on and make a video about it. So this is part of the 10th anniversary edition of Once I Was a Reporter, video edition. We're going to talk about Shayne Enright, something missing from that book. And the only place that she kind of comes into play is when I talk about that big stealth reporter bag I would carry around with 2 camera bodies and, your typical wedding photographer lens package, the 16 to 35 and the 70 to 200 2.8 L glass, even today. But now the Canon's come out with this R thing. So much has changed. Anyway, so I would go around with that, and this is when I was chasing ambulances. I started out as the ambulance chaser, like I'm a lawyer or something, and then I became Disaster Images. And Honolulu EMS hired a woman named Shayne Enright to start being this public information officer. This was when you could still pick up EMS on the radio. And so that's why I guess police are mostly encrypted here in San Diego, and like in Los Angeles up there, where the lawyers basically defend stringers in ways like that. But you still get fire, you still get EMS down here. And that's a lot, because if you go to Honolulu, where they can very easily shut everything down, they encrypt the entire public safety system, and that means EMS and fire you don't get. So one of the things I am pushing for, I'm still working with Honolulu City Council. I still maintain open communication with them, and one of the things that's on our list of many things to do, especially when we finally get a paycheck, is to call Andrea, Tupola, call ETA, call all these things. We're going to see what happens in the midterm election, Tommy Waters, to talk about making sure that there might be legislation, or rather ordinances passed, that says Honolulu Fire Department must be like Cal Fire, where they put their dispatches on a public website, even have a feed on Broadcastify.com of Honolulu Fire Department, so that when I go there on the Southwest Plane out of the airport, just look at a thing on your cell phone, and there I am at these fire incidents. And but we're going to talk about Shayne Enright, because when they hired her, it was just a weird, everything's like synchronicity, and it's not going to be this way in the book. But another book later, when I'm looking at it as who I am now, knowing what I know now, not on medication, I will talk about this. So this is not going to be in the book. This aspect of which is, I kind of had the hots for her. I kind of had the hots for Shayne Enright because, so they hired her to be the PIO of Honolulu EMS. And so let's go chronologically. I'll never forget her because she was on KITV4, and there was another name, Denby Fawcett. And she was a big name in journalism. KITV4 had her. Because the way she lives in Hawaii, I guess I'll still practice journalism, so Denby Fawcett will go out and do the news. But she's like a legend. You know, it's like having Katie Tur on your local, and you get this a lot in New York. But KITV4 had Denby Fawcett, and she was someone that was, you know, without Geraldo Rivera drawing that map when he was at Fox News embedded within the Iraq War. You know, he disclosed information he shouldn't have as an embedded reporter because he drew a map of where they were when they were, you know, advancing on, I think it was Afghanistan or might have been Iran. But Denby Fawcett, you know, the embedded reporters isn't something entirely new. She was embedded in Vietnam, and you see these pictures of when Denby Fawcett was young and beautiful, and she had this feisty look to her. She had these ponytails or pigtails. And that picture of her with like a thermos or something like this, that's Denby Fawcett. And she was old. You know, when I started watching her in elementary, the wrinkled old lady, gray hair, but she's still kicking. She's a columnist for Honolulu Civil Beat there. But you'd have this, I call her the young intern, Shayne Enright, come on, and she'd have, you know, the Jan Brady, pink blazer kind of stuff on. Like, it's just, you know, there's just this other Shayne. She comes in on a dream. And sure enough, she had reported a story some years later, after I got out of high school and I was in college. You know, I was watching KITV4, and that is one of the things that hasn't been taken down from KITV4's website, like my psychiatrist social rhythm therapy program. And that's for another book too, where I've got criticisms of psychiatry, and they really trumped this thing up, and the journalists, I would say, fell for something. They weren't educated enough. But it was like okay, so Shayne Enright comes on, and the whole news report about it is like, hey, so my name is Shayne, your teachers are retarded, you're a genius. And the news report was about how these teachers that were special ed teachers, and they weren't my teachers directly, but they were very heavily tied to the special ed program at Radford High School. Admiral Arthur W. Radford High School in Honolulu, Hawaii, had, I guess, and yeah, I'm not characterizing it right, tried to share a tranny downtown in Chinatown where they were going to a party related to teachers. Maybe there was alcohol. And then they both tried to share a tranny who turned out to be a Honolulu Police undercover tranny. And so they solicited prostitution, and they got arrested. There were no mugshots well, there was a mugshot or two. But it's just, okay, I mean, interesting anomalies, but and then she showed what a genius reporter she was, because she goes in there, and I don't know if she went to the library. She might have gone to the library. They all know to go to the library. Send the cameraman to the library, ask for the yearbook, the most recent yearbook, find their picture, or it might have been she walked right into the school, and the principal had so much respect for the vaunted institution of what we call third estate or fourth estate media that he just gives Shayne and the cameraman the yearbook. And so they filmed the yearbook, and it was very well put together. And then there she is, all, you know, shiny and sparkling, and the lights on her in the studio. It was green screen. That's what I didn't like about KITV4. It was just they had a big enough a studio not to have to do it that way, but they had green screen back then. And then I was at an incident very early when I was chasing after EMS with a scanner, and it turned out to be kind of nothing. But Shayne was there, and she had, you know, they gave Shayne Enright, so after she left being a reporter, she became the public information officer for Honolulu EMS, and they gave Shayne Enright this car, like a full, like, Honolulu Fire Department battalion chief car, and it said PIO on it, and there was Shayne, and just, she was getting better with time, aging like fine wine or USDA prime cuts of beef, and she had, you know, she comes up to me, so I'm a freelance photographer. I submit images to the media, and I'd been featured quite often on the media in the television news, especially because they couldn't get a cameraman to the scene on time, but I ended up there. And so they would say, you know, they credit me. They'd say copyright disaster images. And this was long before they came out with the film Nightcrawler. That would have been the year that I was the photo editor at Vallejo, Hawaii, actually. And she has, and she comes right up to me, and no woman had ever been that close to me before. And she's like right next to me, and we're like touching. And she takes her finger like this, and she puts it right in my chest, and she's whispering in my ear, "You want the deeds? You want the deeds?" I was like, my heart is thumping. I said, okay. So she tells me something that basically is nothing, and then that's Shayne Enright. That's masturbating a time machine, and then once I was recording 10th anniversary edition.